Okay, someone will shout if I am too quiet at any point, please. It's really amazing to be here with you all. I'm honored to get to share thoughts and learnings with you all. It's so special to share this time. I was thinking in advance of coming up here, I was like, feeling how my heart was beating and how nervous I feel of getting to be here with you all, and literally having the amplification of my voice. And I was thinking about a story we read in the Talmud of Rabbi Nehunya ben Hakana, who every day when he would enter the Beit Midrash, the house of study, where he would teach and learn with colleagues and students, he, in the morning when he would enter, he would quietly say a prayer to himself that he hopes that no one makes an error based on the things he does wrong. And at the end, he leaves and expresses a small, quiet prayer to himself of gratitude for his opportunities and what he's had. I feel that when I learned that, I felt that so strongly. It works, it relates to the work of Jewish learning and teaching and all the other work of education that I've gotten to do both here and throughout my life and work, partially because the work of teaching changes people, and the work of learning changes people. As Martin Buber, an amazing philosopher who changed the world of education, and that is not an understatement, Jewish philosopher in the early 20th century, he writes that through a thou, through a you, through a loving relationship, a person becomes an I, becomes who they are. That it's through other relationships that we become who we are. And teaching and learning, especially in our Jewish world, is all about those relationships that make us who we are. So I was thinking about a story I recently read of a Jewish teacher who talked about the fact that their road to Jewish teaching and being a Jewish teacher was not a given. That they grew up in a family who left the Jewish community. Their parent, this is an adult Jewish teacher who's saying that their parent had a rabbi who said Jews light candles on Shabbat, and Jews keep kosher, and Jews do this and that. So this teacher's parent, as a kid, went home and saw that their Jewish household didn't do those things. And they felt upset at this discord, the word hypocrisy was used in this description, and they distanced themselves from the Jewish community. And their children were raised distant from the Jewish community. And so when the child grew up, that child reconnected later. I think so much about Martin Buber there, that we become who we are based on other people. Those lives were affected, and they were shaped based on that experience. So that small story, in every way, ties to all of the other things I do every day, and in so many connections, and I think that I'm not supposed to be here with you for 6 hours straight. So I won't say every connection that's coming up for me, because I think you'll want to eat eventually. But I want to very specifically connect this idea of teaching and learning shapes who we become to both the Jewish community's experience this week with Yom HaShoah and also Parshat Shmini. So this week was Yom HaShoah, the Jewish community's commemoration of the Holocaust. And some of the things that are in my mind here and on my paper here are related to a talk I gave a couple of years ago at a conference called Education After Genocide, hosted at the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies here. So the question was, what is the work of teaching and learning? That wasn't a Jewish conference specifically and only, but what is the work of teaching and learning in a world following, in the aftermath of genocide? And for me, that question is very stark and part of the work in Jewish teaching and learning. Partially because Jewish education has been in crisis for centuries. Right? This is not, we've been anxious for a long time. I'm anxious. I'm anxious now. I was anxious before. But we've been anxious for a long time. I was listening to a Jewish educator interview Dan Mendelsohn Aviv. He said not long in this interview I heard that Jewish education is the only way we will perpetuate our civilization. Civilizational collapse, right, are the stakes of Jewish education, right? And this is not new. So have you ever heard someone say, kids these days, they're not learning what I learned. They don't know the prayers. How come there aren't more kids showing up? All the things that are expressions of our anxieties. A Jewish adult or a parent would say this about children or about a Jewish learning context in 2025 or in 1925 or in 1825 or in 1725 or earlier. We can look at the Talmud more. But what is it about, so what's different now? Are there differences? Are we always managing the anxiety of Jewish education for centuries, and how are we relating to that over time as historical situations change? There's a historian, Eric Goldstein, who writes that these anxieties in Jewish education, especially within the history of the United States and in particular and Europe, he writes that these stakes, these anxieties, become especially urgent, especially strong, at times when Jewish integration in society is at odds or in direct conflict with Jews maintaining our distinct peoplehood and our distinctive identity. That those moments of tension, according to, is when he says that these anxieties can come out. Based on some facial expressions I just saw, I want to say that everything I say you don't have to agree with. I'm not presuming consensus, and I would love to hear any thoughts, and that these things are all considerations to be talked and discussed. However, I will say, when I read that about that Eric Goldstein wrote that, I also am like, oh, I feel anxious. This is a time of anxiety in the world, and the idea of what does it mean to be myself in the world as a Jew isn't simple. And so, not assuming that that's a shared experience, but that's where it feels apropos to draw that Parshat Shmini occurs this week, or that Yom HaShoah occurs at the same time as Parshat Shmini. So Yom HaShoah, the full name is Yom HaZikaron LaShoah VeLaGvura, the day of memory, of commemoration of the Shoah, the Holocaust, the loss, and Gvura, and our resistance and our strength. That our Jewish community's experience of commemorating the Holocaust is both one of loss and mourning, and also strength and resistance and resilience. So in Parshat Shmini, which comes right at the middle of the Torah, right in the center of the Torah, it has, as Rabbi Tamar was sharing earlier about the story in Shemini, it's in the book of Vayikra, of Leviticus. Leviticus is mostly codes of law codes. And there are two stories in Vayikra, in Leviticus, and Shemini has one of them. Both of Emor has the other. They're both hard. They have a lot of challenging content to confront. As Rabbi Tamar shared, the whole people of Israel encounter God's presence. And then Nadav and Avihu are killed in front of them. And this happens over the course of a few verses. The shocking highs and lows and flow of the community's experience through this story is intense. And so much attention, as Rabbi Torah, you're saying, is paid to the loss of Nadav and Avihu, that right in this moment, Aharon's children, two of Aharon's children are killed in front of him. And one of the things that happens a couple verses later, a couple lines later, is that Moses, says at that point, commands his brother Aaron, and says, Ulehorot et ha-bnei Yisrael et kol ha-chukim asher diber Adonai Eloheim biyad Moshe. That's when Moses commands Aaron, that God commanded, that you must teach Israel all the laws which Adonai their God has given them through Moses. In this moment of personal tragedy and communal shock at encounter with the divine and the loss of leaders' lives, the children of Aaron. That's a moment where Moses says, you have to teach. That teaching is what we do. Right? High anxiety. There's a lot is at stake with teaching and learning, and it's everywhere in our Jewish tradition, even in these moments when it's easy, and at these moments when it's hard. So I want to draw one more connection of the many, many connections I want to talk with you all about and would love to hear your thoughts about. As a kid, teenager, I was looking at my dad's bookshelf. My father, Victor Vital, Zichrono Livracha, was a Holocaust survivor. And on his bookshelf, he had a book which included an essay by Emil Fackenheim, and the essay was entitled The 614th Commandment. And this was certainly a controversial essay, not a simple idea, but Fackenheim wrote that, so there are 613 mitzvot, commandments in the Torah, and Fackenheim, writing in 1967, specifically following the Shoah and the Holocaust, writes that the Jewish community has another commandment. And that commandment is that it is forbidden to hand Hitler yet another posthumous victory. I started with the story of the Jewish teacher whose parent became disconnected with the Jewish community because their well-intentioned teacher asserted a kind of Jewishness that they felt alienated them. That was a loss to the Jewish community. That this idea that our interactions shape who we are, that Martin Buber has shared with us, is a very old and critical Jewish idea. And it is part of what it means to maintain community in the face of loss. That, just like in Shmini, in times where we face loss, anxiety, and tragedy, we still learn with each other and talk with each other. And what we learn also now as thinkers today, we have to be very sensitive to the things we do that can create alienation. So I would hope that that educator and that leader would have a chance to talk about Jewishness differently, so that a Jewish learner wouldn't compare their life unfavorably to a description of what a Jew does. To draw this out a little more, as a teenager, at the same time as I'm reading this essay by Fackenheim, I'm involved in Jewish youth activities, and I have peers who who feel increasingly alienated from the Jewish community because they don't believe in X or Y specific concept of God. And in those times, I remember talking with my peers of, you don't have to believe in that idea of God. Jewishness is not based on accepting that theology. Jewishness isn't contingent on that theology, or really any theology. It's not, in that way, a belief system. Or peers at the time who felt alienated because of other experiences of racism or encounters where their abilities or learning or knowledge or disabilities were in conflict, they felt, with leadership and with community. These moments were moments where I hold both Martin Buber's teaching, where we become who we are and we affect who others are, and thinking of Emil Fackenheim's teaching, where we have to manifest a Jewishness that doesn't preemptively lose Jews because of the things we say and do. And boy, is this hard to do. High anxieties. It's not about not trying to up the ante of civilizational collapse, but I think that the ability to, in the post-Holocaust world, of understand the teaching both as interpersonal and as systemic, which is so much to hold, is one of the challenging and beautiful obligations of Jewish education in our world now and in our time in history. The question that I'll love to just chat with any of you about at any point for years to come, not even just today, is how do we help each other be in unconditional Jewish relationship with each other? That the conditionality of Jewishness was turned on, was felt in those experiences of alienation. But Jewishness is a kind of identity that is not conditional, based on one idea that someone holds in one moment. And it's through that unconditionality that we have Jewish identity that will last, grow with us, Jewish community that will change and adapt as our personalities develop, and also will help us grow within massive historical moments. That even in those moments of loss, like with Nadav and Avihu, we'll still teach and learn with each other. So we'll do it unconditionally, is my hope. And I would love to talk with you more about how that keeps going. Thanks. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much, DMarcos.